Alright, so I'm making this video in order to demonstrate the kind of funky finish work I'm doing for the Four Winds hat. As you can see, I've gotten to the point where I have 17 stitches on each of my 4 double pointed needles, and I've just finished row 2 of the decrease, so I've just knit around. And what I'm going to do is kind of a 3 needle bind off here. So I'm going to go ahead and reach through and grab my hat and inside out it, first and foremost. And then, as you can see, my yarn is coming from here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a 3 needle bind off with these 2 needles. So I'm just going to kind of compress it like that. It may be a little bit awkward, but luckily you don't have to hold it for too long. And then I'm going to use a 3 needle bind off to bind off 9 stitches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert my needle, of course, through the first stitch on each one. Hey, Bubba. I'm going to knit it.
My pad.
It's your pad, I know. I'm going to knit another one. So now that's 2 stitches. And I'm going to go ahead and pull that stitch over since we're binding off. And again, we're going to do that for 9 stitches on these 2 needles.
Can you eat?
Yes, you can eat. You're a very good eater. Well, that's not true. Okay, at this point, as you can see, I've done the 3 needle bind off for those first 9 stitches, which means I have 8 stitches left on each of these needles. And then I have this 1 stitch hanging out over here. You're going to want some scrap yarn on a tapestry needle, and you can just go ahead and transfer that 1 stitch to your scrap yarn for now, like so. Unfortunately, that also means that your yarn tail is no longer in the right spot, so just clip it, leaving enough room to handily bind off your end. And then we're going to start the same process on the other side of the hat with these 2 needles here. So I'm going to scoot these ones through a bit, and then I'm going to begin over here. And I'm going to do the same thing like I said. I'm going to use a 3 needle bind off to bind off 9 stitches. Okay, as you can see, I've now finished my 3 needle bind off for my other side. So I have my 2 sets of 8 stitches and that funky last stitch, which I'm going to take my tapestry needle here and just thread through that stitch as well. So I have 2 stitches now being held. And then once that's done, I already clipped my yarn tail, but you're going to have to clip yours at this point since we're going to start the 3 needle bind off from another direction again. So basically, right now your stitches are oriented this way. You're going to switch them because you're going to bind off from one of these corners that you haven't started at before, like that. This time, however, when you start the bind off, yes, baby. So there's your old yarn here. This time, however, when you start the bind off, you are going to bind off all the way across. So if you want, you can go ahead and transfer your stitches to begin with, because that'll make it a lot easier to hold. Yes, you're very cute. So then you will have 16 stitches on each of your 2 needles that you need for your 3 needle bind off, and then you'll simply begin at one end and complete the bind off from there.
Hi.
Okay, at this point you can see that I have done the 3 needle bind off all the way across that seam or whatever here, and I have 1 stitch left on my needle. So you can go ahead and just clip your yarn tail and then pull it through that final stitch. And then all you have left to deal with are these 2 funny stitches that you have on your scrap yarn. I don't know if yours are going to be above or below your bind off. Mine are obviously below it. So what you want to do is just take your needle off of your scrap yarn, and then you have these tails from when you had to clip your yarn. So you can just thread your tapestry needle onto one of your tails, and then very simply thread it through those 2 stitches that you have left to kind of close up that hole at the top of the hat. And I'm probably even going to loop it back through 1 or 2 more times just to make sure that it stays nice and tight. If you want it to really go crazy, I guess you could loop this one through as well. And then all you have to do is tuck in your ends and you're done.